All right. Well, hi, folks. Steven here. I'm right here with Anne from Pikapi Podcast. And as you may be able to guess, this is our going to be our discussion of the music of Pokemon Secret to the Jungle. Of course, the movie released 2 weeks ago. Um, and there's a lot of material to talk about.
So
Uh,
many songs.
let's see. In a little bit of time, we're going to go through and do our actual discussion. We're going to give folks a few minutes to get in here. Anne, why don't you summarize what you've been up to recently?
Honestly, not a ton Pokemon related. Mostly just doing life. The rest of you are. But I run Pikapi Podcast. It's a Pokemon anime podcast that chronicles Ash's journey throughout the Pokemon anime series. Given that this movie and the music we're covering today is kind of from the alternate timeline dimension, it's kind of a little. It's kind. I've mixed feelings about that. So this is gonna be fun though.
Yeah. So as far as stuff I've been doing, I'm sure some folks have been. If you've been watching the podcast feed, earlier this week I put out episode 50 of the Digest podcast. Since we're fairly infrequent, that's a pretty long milestone. So I've been putting out episodes for about 5 years now. I think I really started the podcast feed in early 2017, but the first stuff started coming out in the fall. Um, so the one I just put out was the music of Pokemon Troze slash insert Pokemon song here. That was our discussion where I proposed making my way any way that I can into the music, into the actual film Pokemon first. Would be you picked to do some stuff with um, I Am a Collector. Now, earlier this month, this is a rare month where I got to do multiple episodes. I got an interview with, oh gosh, I can see him, and I'm trying to remember, Paul Umbach, the guy who did a lot of the background instruments and background vocals and co-produced Aaron Carter's "Have Some Fun with the Funk" from the first movie soundtrack. Admittedly, not it's one of the party songs that are on that album, which I always attribute to the short. But that was partially in preparation for a discussion that we've tabled for a little bit, our deconstructing Pokemon music discussion. But we will get to that. But obviously, with the massive outlay that has been Secret to the Jungle and Pokemon 25, which we'll be doing an episode on soon, it's going to be a little while before we get to that, and so I'm not sure exactly. And then we have to, after all of that, we finally get to Generation 4 with, I believe, Pokemon Battle Revolution is the first Generation 4 side game. So lot to look forward to. Let's see here. I think, let's see, it's been a couple minutes. I'll give it. Not sure how many folks. I was hoping I never know exactly how many people we're going to get. We'll probably get some that come in later. Thanks to the folks who watched. I did do a stream last weekend where I played through the complete game of the randomizer of Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy. I've been working on that for a little over a year now. So that's kind of what I've been working on and doing stuff. But I think we're going to get started here relatively shortly. So just to review, if this is your first time coming to one of these things, or whether you're viewing this live or on a restream. So the way this one works is that basically, well, in a normal movie, what we usually wind up doing is talking mostly about the ending credits theme songs of both movies, a little bit about the opening theme song, assuming there's a proper full opening sequence, a little bit about the score, and then we usually do a bonus segment at the end talking about the movie itself. This one's a little different. I guess the last time we did a normal movie must have been, I guess, Power of Us, which was within a couple years.
Yeah.
Because obviously after that we did Detective Pikachu. Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution had some, I guess you could call it baggage, coming
We had
along
things to
with it,
say.
and stuff like that. Had a lot of things that came along with it. So this is going to be another big one. We won't be able to probably go as in depth on all the tracks as we would like, just because even though this is going to be a longer than usual discussion,
So much.
there's a lot of stuff here. And like I said, we are planning doing a separate episode on the Pokemon 25th anniversary album that came out last Friday from when we are recording this. So we're hoping to do that sometime in a week or two or so, depending on how long it takes us to plow through all the stuff that we have here. Anne actually just sent me the audio for our, speaking of Genius Sonority Games, the Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness stuff there. So we have a ton of stuff to go, and we're going to, I think, get into this. Thank you to everyone who's watching this, whether it's live or afterwards. You can give us a comment anytime you like. We always appreciate that. All right, so let me see. Let me make sure I get my recording setup stuff here. By the way, if I start cutting out a lot, we do have sort of a backup plan where I go audio only for a little bit. We tested that out in our test stream earlier, and that does seem to help a little bit. So if we run into that case there, let us know. Hopefully Anna and I are relatively good levels. It's a little hard to tell now because I'm not speaking quite directly into the microphone just yet. But it looks like we're just about, let's see, ready here. All right, so so the structure is basically we're going to go into a little bit of an introduction to the movie and our experience and our expectations of it. Then we're going to go through a bunch of songs. There are a lot of them. Then we're going to talk about the score for a little bit. Then we're going to give our overall opinions on the music. I don't think there's any feedback for us, but if we get some stuff from the audience, we always appreciate that, and we'll try and work that in where we get that. And then we're also going to go into and then if assuming we don't run super overtime, like we do with Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, we're planning on recording our movie discussion after all of that. So quite a packed slate today, and we're going to try and get through it. But please do feel free to put in some comments if you have some opinions. All right. Well, I'm going to start recording on both of these. Okay, so let's see here. All right, I think my levels look good. Ann, are things good on your side?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Turn that down just a shade for Ann's audio on my side, just to be on the safe side. All right, we're going to do what we usually do here. Going to leave a little bit of a pause, and then I'm going to do an introduction. So, hi, folks. Steven here. I'm on the phone with Ann from Pikapi Podcast. And it took a while to get here, but the latest Pokemon movie, Secrets of the Jungle, has finally arrived, and we're going to discuss the music of it like we usually do. Let me do a little bit of a different intro just to give some choices in editing. Hi, folks. Steven here. I'm on the phone with Ann from Pikapi Podcast, and this is finally going to be our Pokemon Secrets of the Jungle music discussion. So, this movie was released late 2020 in Japan after being delayed due to the pandemic, and it took an extra long time to get to the West earlier in October when we're recording this. But we did finally get a chance to see it and listen to it and all that fun stuff, and we have a lot to talk. But we did finally get a chance to watch and listen to it, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of songs. There's also still a score. There's a few other things we're going to throw in here, but let's just sort of start with our expectations of this movie. So this was announced, well, it was sort of announced right after Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution came out in Japan. There was something in there that said, yeah, next year's movie is going to be the regular animation. Technically speaking, both the 3D animation and the quote-unquote hand-drawn animation, that's all done on computers these days anyway, but it's going to be more of a traditional animation. So we knew that. I'm not sure precisely when we knew that there were going to be a bunch of insert songs in it, or exactly what the theme would be. I think that came either late in 2020 or partway into, I think that either came late in 2019 or early or midway through 2020 as we got closer to it. Let's see, 1 second here. Let's see. As far as myself, even though the Japanese insert songs are easily available on YouTube and most streaming services in kind of an album that they put out, I did kind of purposely avoid most of the music pre-release. That includes not only the Japanese music, but also the English music EP that was put out, and also the score album. I had heard a number of things about the music. There were some folks that are pretty positive. Given my history and my impressions, given some of my more recent opinions of his work, you might be trying to think how to phrase this. Sorry about this, folks. In addition to things, positive stuff about some of the Japanese vocal songs, I did hear some folks were really impressed with the score by Shinji Miyazaki. I was a little cautious on that, given my kind of lukewarm opinion of most of his more recent work. But as I sort of outlined there, I did try to keep relatively fresh going in, not knowing exactly what to expect. And what was your kind of approach for this one?
I worked very hard to not watch any trailers and not try to actively avoid news and spoilers. Partly because past movies in the Pokemon franchise have lied to me in their trailers, and I've found I have a better experience when I don't have a clue what's going to happen or what's all involved. To a point, again, I work on this podcast, so stuff happens and I find out about it. But yeah, no, I was able to go in knowing that there would be a boy raised by Pokemon and it would take place in a jungle and Ash would be there and there would be a lot of vague music news that we had been discussing previous. But other than that, I was able to go in kind of pretty blank slate, and that was exactly the way that ended up being a great experience. So I think I'm going to keep that going for subsequent movies.
Yeah, different people have different experiences. Some folks won't really have a clue until it gets dropped or stuff like that. So I think there was one part of it I did sort of listen to beforehand. There was an English version of Beverly's Coco song that was released. We'll talk more about that when we get to that song in sort of our, I guess you could call it a playlist at this point. But as far as actually watching the movie, of course, it dropped on Netflix earlier in October 2021. I can only assume that the Pokemon Company and or Netflix got tired of waiting either for a pediatric vaccine or for the pandemic to subside more than it did and stuff like that, and decided not to do a theatrical thing. Netflix itself, at least pre-pandemic, did do theatrical showings of various movies on at least a somewhat limited basis. And I'm hoping they'll resume that, so maybe the next Pokemon movie we do get a chance to see that theatrically. But I did end up watching this on the night it released. I had a little bit of trouble. My first plan was actually to watch it on the Wii U, but Netflix canceled the Wii U client sometime within the last, year or so. Then I figured, well, I can try watching it on my Blu-ray player, but my Blu-ray player, it'll connect sort of to Netflix, but not really, so I couldn't really get in there. I guess that's too old. As I'm sure a lot of the folks at home will know, at least as of the recording this, there's still no Netflix client for the Switch. And so my next thing was to take a cell phone that I had replaced, I guess, last year, and hook that up, and that had some issues as well. So eventually I just hooked up my existing phone, my current phone, to the television, booted up the Netflix app, and watched there, and it worked relatively well. I think that there's a bit of a frame pacing issue with the 24 frames per second or whatever, footage or whatever it is, but other than that, it played just fine. And I hope you had fewer problems than I did, but I assume otherwise your experience was much the same.
I did not have the adventure that you had. I just put it on my computer and went to the website. So had to revive my Netflix account for this. You're welcome, Netflix. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure some folks did watch as a family or as a group or something, but obviously given the current conditions, it's still hard to put any sort of large gathering or anything like that together. If you did have a group watch session, I'd love to know what people thought of that. All right. Well,
Mhm.
in a more condensed movie musically, we would usually just say, okay, here's ending song A and ending song B from the other version. Since there's a lot of songs here, we won't be able to go quite in as much detail about some of the folks involved as we would like, but there are a couple people involved with more than one of the songs on each side that we haven't really covered before, and I wanted to make sure we did a little bit there. I'm going to start actually on the English side with two people involved there. So one of those is a musician called Sin. It's spelled C-Y-N. Her real name is Cynthia Nabanzi. Yeah, Cynthia Nabanzi. I think that might be how it's pronounced. Not sure if her first
Example.
name helped her out in any way. It'll be interesting to see if any of her other stuff gets used in a Diamond and Pearl remake commercial. That'd be kind of interesting. Not to say she didn't have any talent or anything, but a name can sometimes help. She's originally from Michigan, which, for those of you who don't know your U.S. geography, is one of the Great Lakes states. It's sort of shaped like a hand, but it has a very rounded thumb, as opposed to Wisconsin, which is directly to the west, that has a very sharp thumb. One thing I found interesting about her, I looked up her education. She applied to a school to a school of music at a university. She got rejected there, and then went to through basically an IT education program at that university and graduated from that. So I think she's got a little bit of a geeky vibe to her. If you look at her Wikipedia article, they show her in like a NASA sweatshirt or something like that, which is kind of interesting. As far as her musical career, she was mentored by Katy Perry, which makes a lot of sense given some of the other stuff we know. And she, even though her first album was only released in 2019, she's done a lot of soundtrack songs. I looked up some of it: Smallfoot, Birds of Prey, and of course, Secrets of the Jungle. She does, let's see, Always Safe and No Matter What. So one of those is the sort of opening credit song. The other one is the first part of the closing credits. Anne, did you have anything else on Sin that you wanted to put out there?
I am kind of just learning about her now post movie, so I don't think I have much to add. But she definitely sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so she's really kind of just getting started. One thing I forgot to mention just now is actually kind of relevant to this movie. Earlier this year, she actually had her first child back in February of this year. So, not sure exactly when these songs were recorded. It might have been before, it might have been after, but certainly made scheduling interesting, I'm sure, but also kind of gives her sort of a different perspective on the movie, I'm sure, as well. So the songs that she performed were co-written by Matias Moura. Hope I got that about right. He's originally from Costa Rica and now lives in California. Aside from doing a number of songs with Sin, it's also worked with someone, I hope I'm pronouncing this one right, Jeunesse and Alice Gray and a number of other things. You can find his website online. One thing I found interesting is although his career is in music, usually musicians have a pretty loud social media presence. This guy, he has a Twitter feed, but he barely kind of uses it. He hasn't had too much activity there recently, which is kind of interesting. Maybe work just has him so busy that he doesn't have time to be on social networks, but wanted to call that out too. And I don't suppose, did you get a chance to look up anything on Matthias?
No, he is also rather new to me, so I think in this case you are the one educating me.
All right. Well, and there is a person, he's been working with Pokemon since like the beginning of Sun and Moon on the Japanese side, but he's also heavily involved with, I guess, with the vocal songs on this movie. Why don't you go ahead and describe, I think it's what, Taiiku Okazaki?
Yeah, Taiiku Okazaki, or Okazaki Taiiku. He's his real name is Akitoshi Oka, and yeah, he's a songwriter who's and a musician who's like really known for like humorous lyrics. So he does like a lot of really fun, like I don't know like a good comparison. Like Weird Al is not the same because this guy doesn't do parodies so much, but he's kind of got a reputation of like someone who does fun songs. And we'll, as we get to some of the songs in here that we'll talk about, you can kind of see that flavor coming through. But he's signed to SME right now, and yeah, it just does a lot of really cool independent work, and also has a Team Skull grunt character named after him, who appeared in the anime even. So that's fun.
Yeah, obviously he made kind of an impression there. I think he may have actually done some rapping. Team Skull, back in the Sun and Moon games and corresponding, interpretations, definitely had a bit of an image and reputation that's a little bit offset and a little bit more hardcore than
They're a
than some
special
of the
group.
other teams we've seen before and since. So. Um, Yeah, I did know a few things. Apparently, he did some of his early compositional work on on what is it, Band Brothers or on DS and stuff like that.
Yes. Oh, sorry, all my notes went away, but yes, that's right. And he's, yeah, kind of just slowly kind of come up through the indie music scene, and also done some voice acting as well.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, wasn't his first thing that he did for the Pokemon anime Pose, which I think is the first ending theme of the Sun and Moon anime arc.
Yes.
Yeah, and I had
And he's
mentioned
also
that.
like, yeah. Oh, sorry.
And I had mentioned that a lot of the Japanese stuff here, you can find it. You probably just want to search Coco or something like that. It's hard for me to give you like the best way to search for it because it probably varies a bit. But you can find it officially, and it's got not only the 6 songs that he worked on in some way for this movie, but also some of his other work that he's done for the Pokemon anime. And you can find that pretty much anywhere officially on like music streaming services or YouTube or stuff like that. All right, well, let's sort of talk. There are 6 insert songs in this movie. Normally, there'd be probably like 2 because there'd be one for like the opening credit sequence and then one for the ending credits, and that would be about it. This one, they really went above and beyond for this one. Now,
Right.
of these 6 songs, 2 of them are more or less the same between the English and Japanese versions, or I should say the international and Japanese versions. One of them doesn't really have any lyrics to begin with. The other one, the lyrics were more or less translated. And then the other 4 are different. Don't know exactly why. It's probably the usual stuff like either they couldn't reach an agreement, or it would have taken too long for all the territories they wanted to release the movie in and stuff like that. Those are certainly possibilities. But in any case, whatever your preferences are, I do want to lay out some ground rules that Ann and I will, first of all, try to ourselves adhere to, is that you're allowed to prefer what you want, and you can certainly mix and match. You don't have to pick all the English songs or all the Japanese songs, or, you might not like either of them, or you might have a very hard time deciding. All of that is okay. We always try to keep an open door policy, I guess you could call it, for these discussions. So whichever one you like, if one of us decides that we like the other one more, don't take it personally, okay? Well, we're going to go in order that they appear in the movie. So right off the bat, you get, I think there's a couple different names, but we're going to kind of refer to it as the Song of Zarude, which is sort of an anthemic theme that the Zarude chorus, I guess you could call it. It's a bunch of gruff male-sounding voices read off some things about themselves in sort of, I don't know. I don't know if you could really call it a rap. And what did you kind of think of the song that starts the movie off?
Like, yeah, rap is not what I'd go with, but like definitely very anthemic, as you said. Like it's kind of just a pounding beat, it like very percussive, very drum-like. The lyrics as well as the music itself, it kind of, yeah, just pounding out the rules of being a Zarude, and we own the jungle, and we are the jungle. Yeah, it's just very, very powerful. It does what it is intended to do, which is to kind of strike a little fear into you, to sound very important and official, and like give you jungle vibes.
Yeah, very different opening from at least the pre-alternate universe films, where they would often open up with a "Welcome to the world of Pokemon" and then do some sort of quick summary of how the world works and stuff. This one, they kind of just drop you in and say, "Yeah, this one's going to be a little different." It's since these are not parallel to the main TV series anymore, we don't usually get any sort of anime opening carryover like we do, but we did have a song right at the start here, so. And that sort of sets the tone that this movie is not going to be. They've one part of this whole alternate universe thing was to shake things up and experiment more. And I think this one really does work. It's very aggressive, very drum based and stuff. Kind of what you would expect from a rough place like a jungle.
Yes. I love this track so much. I really do in both languages. It's just so fun.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, English version of it is not on. There's an EP of songs from the English dub of this movie, and unfortunately, there's not this. You can listen to the Japanese version on that album that we talked about before. All right. Well, this is right after that. There's basically another song not too long after. Sorry. Well, not too long after that, there's another song that comes in, and this is where it kind of splits a little bit. On the English side, we have Always Safe by Sin, and then on the Japanese side, we have Coco by Beverly. We're going to start on the English side with most of these splits. So, Always Safe it's a very soft song. It's acoustic and piano, so it's not... Sorry. It's basically just vocals, acoustic guitar, piano, a few little sound effects here and there, and not a ton else. Kind of minimal as we're going through this process of, Coco going from an infant to a small child and stuff like that. And was that more or less the vibe you got from this song?
Actually, no. Like, when it first... Let me take that again.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Actually, no. That wasn't. You kind of hipped me to a version of this song that is very minimalistic and very just piano. But the version on the movie I saw, like when it came in, I was like, it felt a bit like a tonal change. Like it just came in kind of hard for me. Which is not to say it's bad, because it was a very fun, like it was a song that was like very tender and very sweet, but also very fun and energetic. So you really kind of got a sense of the dynamic between Coco and his dada, which, given how many comedic scenes were going on as the Zarude is raising this human child, really seemed to fit. But like going from like a very quiet score that like was very bland in the scene immediately before the song came in to the song coming in, I thought it almost could have gone softer. And if we end up talking about that other track, the quieter version, like I almost wonder what that version would have felt like in the movie versus the slightly more energetic one.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I guess I was comparing it more to Coco, which goes in a very different musical direction. Whereas
Sure
if you were
does.
comparing it more to the score that came in beforehand, I think for a long time now, they've been mixing the score lower in the mix than they did during earlier eras of the anime. So maybe that's part of it. But there's two versions of this song. There's the one you can, I guess, see in the movie and buy commercially, and then, which I didn't think was, to be honest, that it certainly was not bombastic. And then there's an even more stripped down version that I don't know really where it came from. You can find it on YouTube, and it's basically got a few more things pared back. I'm not sure if this is somehow got leaked out there, or if there's if anyone knows if there's a radio CD single that was sent out and someone ripped that and put it on there. I'd love to know. But getting into some of the other aspects of it. There's a lot of series of rising and falling notes, which isn't totally unusual in music, but it uses a lot of flight metaphors in this one, and the way it works, it does sound kind of like a small bird or maybe a small plane. Certainly not like a jumbo jet or a fighter jet or something like that. This is not danger zone.
Mm.
Taking off and then coming back and stuff like that. Did you get that vibe as well from this, Anne?
Yeah, like it definitely had a very, I don't know, parental sort of um I don't know, perspective at its core, kind of watching the young person explore the world and fly off and try and fail and come back and leave. And yeah, just it was very sweet, but also like very full of a sense of exploration and freedom at the same time.
Yeah, and there's some neat little instruments. I noticed there's a rain stick in both versions of this song that's used. Since obviously jungles get a lot of rain and stuff like that. That's kind of something you would more or less expect. But I did want to call out one of the lyrics as well. One of the lyrics at least uses, I believe, I was just listening to it before we did this discussion. It says, "At your doorstep," which, of course, I don't know. Laws vary in different countries and different states and stuff like that. But there's that story of someone, abandoning a child that they can't care for or whatever on someone's doorstep, or like either a house or a church or a hospital or something like that. And that feels extraordinarily intentional, even though, as we find out later in the movie, the circumstances here are a fair bit different than what might happen, in real life where that type of thing occurs. And did you notice that lyric at all, or?
Not like it didn't stick out to me till you pointed it out, but that's yeah, very beautiful, or like that's a very good connection.
All right. Well, like I said, with these, we won't be going maybe as deep as we would like with some of these, but let's switch over to the Japanese side. So, Coco by Beverly. Now, Beverly is someone we've heard from several times. I think she's done things for a couple of different movies. This might be, well, she did an ending theme somewhere. I forget, but she's this might be her biggest thing yet. Anne, why don't you sort of describe sort of your initial impressions of this song?
Yeah, like this song, we were talking about comparisons. It goes hard. Um, like it's just it like there's a lot of drum beat, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of like vocal choruses, and then Beverly's soft voice and harmonies. Um, and it kind of very much like Always Safe, like has that um feeling of like watching a young person go off and explore the world, and like their feelings and the rush of exhilaration and sense of belonging. um that's very cool. So it's like it's a song I love. Like I said, it goes a lot harder than Always Safe does. So again, I'm not sure how I would feel had I watched this in Japanese, if I would have thought it felt. But like there's a lot of that same sentiment of like um, people touch, like maybe a parent or maybe a friend, like touching hands together, and we'll be lost together and our hearts always connected. Leave the scary stuff up to me. And at some point you grow up and then you left the nest and I grew sad. Like a lot of these kind of sentiments of, again, watching out for a younger person who is so full of life and excitement and wanting to protect that in them.
Yeah, I was kind of going to ask what this exactly the song is talking about. I mean, there is an English version, although it's an extremely direct translation, which I tend to find doesn't always leave the best impression. I think one of the lines comes in that English version comes across as like "you lead a better life" or something like that in there, and it's I guess it's okay if you wanted them to use that in the English version, but quite personally, I don't know that people would be. I don't know. It just seems very awkward like that. I think it would have been better had they tried to just hand that off to someone to do like a Make-A-Wish type of job on the song, to keep similar themes but to work over there if they wanted to use that original melody. As it stands, I listed that this had a driving beat. And I could certainly tell that they put a lot of production effort into it, and that Beverly loved doing the performance she did. I don't know if it's just the language barrier or what, but the song didn't register super high on me. But maybe that's just my musical taste. I don't know.
It could be a bit of both. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Like I will not begrudge its existence or anything like that. I don't think it's awful or anything, but it didn't set my heart on fire. So I guess with both of those kind of out of the way, if I had to pick one of these, to be honest, I kind of think that these you've heard the phrase "hit the nail on the head." I think these songs actually tried hitting the same nail from opposite sides to a certain extent. I think that "Always Safe" might be a little too not energetic enough. I don't know. That's probably not quite what the words I wanted to use for the scenes it's playing over. But I almost feel like Coco is going too far in the other direction in terms of that. So I guess but all that being said, for personal preference and for use in the scene, I think I prefer Always Safe. I don't know. And you're allowed to disagree with me, so don't be afraid if either way.
Right. It's hard to say just because, like, Coco makes me feel like I'm flying, and I feel so excited. Like, I remember being a young person, and right now I work with a youth group, and like it kind of stirs up that joy of watching them be 13. And so it's like it's doing things for me that the movie is trying to do, and that's all great. I have also not watched the movie though with this particular song playing under the scene. So again, I don't know how it would hit me, like the fact that it is going so hard, and there is some sad stuff happening in that scene when the Zarude realizes this kid's parents are dead. And spoiler. So like in some ways Always Safe, just because it doesn't come in quite that hard, kind of can get the sort of come stop your crying, it'll be all right vibes from Tarzan, as it kind of deals with some of those similar things. So I'm kind of torn. I think right now I would say Always Safe for the movie, but as like the theme song of the movie Coco, but it's a very fine line, and the dial may shift over time.
Yeah. As I listened to these two songs, I sort of tried to picture Coco over the opening sequence, and maybe it's just because I saw Always Safe first. It was difficult, or it seemed maybe a little too energetic for some of the scenes that were happening in there. I mean, maybe in editing over the thing there, it works out a bit better. You kind of mentioned that you haven't heard the Japanese track. Now, they did put a Japanese language track in Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, although it had the English songs in it. For this one, there was not any sort of Japanese audio. I can only assume that the uptake on Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution was just not high enough for them to justify doing that, or other logistical issue prevented them from doing it. I wouldn't mind it being available, but at least the song itself is, which I do appreciate. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we got another song that comes in about, 20, 30 minutes later after Ash and Coco have, Ash, we're going to spoil some of the stuff in here. We kind of already have, but we kind of assume you've seen the movie. At one point, Coco gets knocked unconscious, and Ash rescues him from a lake or a stream or whatever, and takes him into the city for medical attention. And, there's a whole scene where he wakes up and he's like fish out of water and all that fun stuff. And then eventually it comes to a point where Ash shows him around the city that's near this jungle. And this is another split here. So on the English side, we have My New Friends, which is Ben Dixon and the Sad Truth. This is an Ed Goldfarb produced song. And then on the Japanese side, we have something called Show Window. Anne will talk more about that. I did make some notes for it, but she'll talk more about that when we get to it. But let's kind of start with My New Friends. This is a very much stands in contrast, certainly to Song of Zarude, stylistically. This is a bouncy, bright song. This has much more of a city feel to it, even though the city outside the jungle isn't super bustling or huge. It's got some roads and stuff like that. But Anne, I assume that was one of the first things you noticed about the song.
yeah, like this movie has taken us a lot of different places with music, and like again, this is something completely different. But yeah, it just very much set the tone of like we're gonna have just some fun right now, and yeah.
You know, yeah. One thing I wanted to kind of note about this is that when it goes to the my best friends, the my best has kind of a honestly a doorbell quality to it, almost as if, oh, my friends are coming over, they're here now,
Oh,
and stuff like that. I'm not sure how intentional that was. Um, I'm sure there was some thought behind it, but it seems like that just kind of works there. I don't know if that struck you, Anne.
you know, like doorbell is not like the word I would have used until you said it, but like I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, yeah. And I kind of love that quality. But yeah, however you describe it, whatever words used to describe it, it definitely has a sense of like, come on and join the fun, or like everybody's coming and I want to join them. And that's so neat.
Yeah. Now, I guess one criticism I do have of my best friends is the if you buy this is on the EP you can buy of the songs from the movie from the English adaptation. Kind of the problem is all you get in there is the music that's actually in the movie. Like there's only really like one real verse in there. Like I would love to see this song fully realized. I think that would be pretty cool if they ever get an opportunity to do that. That would be really nice. Um, I don't know about you, Anne. Did you have a similar feeling there?
Um, Maybe. Like I would definitely be interested in that. I liked this song and it did what it wanted to do. I didn't love this song. Um so it's like I'm not like I'd like to hear it fully realized, but I'm kind of there's part of me is just like, eh, it's not my favorite song in this movie.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean I necessarily think it's the weak link or anything, but like I'm
Hmm.
not as enthused about it. It was just kind of like, oh, this is really great for the moment it's in, and then I'm done.
Well, I did want to throw another thing out there. We'll talk about the Pokemon 25 album in a future discussion. But one of the songs on there's a song on there called Art Show. I think it's by Yazzle, I think is the name of the artist. And it's a little bit longer than the scene goes on for. It's about 30 seconds long. It's about 2 minutes versus the scene, which is about a minute and a half. And there are seemingly some similar themes there. And to be honest, Art Show, like I wouldn't call it really bad or anything, but it's certainly not the most interesting one on there. I don't know. Anne, have you had a chance to listen to that song? Do you think it would have worked for this scene, or?
Oh, it might have. I'd have to relook at it again and relook at the lyrics again, but I think that might have been another good choice or another very interesting one.
Yeah, the scene is calling it an art show is maybe a little bit narrow. Like I think right at the beginning they walk by some art of a like a Caterpie or something, but then they go to like an ice cream store and to like a concert or something like that and some other things. So it's not. I mean, yes, cooking is an art, music is an art, but maybe I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to know that. Now it's entirely possible also that art show is destined like for a commercial in something coming up later. Like they'll do something like themed around art from the TCG or from themed around Smeargle, and that'll explain everything. But at this point, I did kind of just want to throw it out there as a possible alternate for this scene. Um, so I guess that's a fun splice if you want to try that.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the Japanese alternative, show window, which I guess I'm not sure exactly who does the vocals here, if it's the main guy himself or something else. Anne, why don't you talk a little bit about this song?
Yeah, by all accounts, it is Okazaki who's doing the voices, but it's not 100% um, sure about that. But yeah, this is kind of again just a very fun song. But when I talked earlier about like he's kind of known for fun lyrics, this is kind of where that's on display because he's writing from the point of view of a young boy who's like, it's a new day and I'm discovering the world. And it's like, oh, that thing in the shop is cute. That thing is cool. I'm going around drinking fizzy sodas and listening to my favorite songs and riding on my bike. And like, there's this fun moment where he's talking about like, I can play until my voice goes out, and like, he's just screaming those lyrics. So yeah, and this idea of like, there's so many fun places around us. Like I cannot pick where to go. And to like, stop just staring at the shop windows, like go out and explore them and change the world. It's like an adventure. So it's kind of doing a lot of the same things as the English side. Again, it's just a little bit different, little bit of a different musical style, slightly, little bit different lyrics, but I think the core sentiment is the same.
Yeah, I mean, they are filling the same void, which I guess technically all of these are, but they definitely went in similar directions here.
Mm-hmm.
I did like some of the chorus. I felt was particularly slick on this one. I think of the 6 Japanese songs, this actually that are in this movie, this might actually be my favorite to listen to at least. But that's kind of just the thought I had. Definitely, obviously, very much a city, sort of a show tune-ish feel as well. Song and dance numbers, sort of what I have in there. So I think as far as a preference, I don't know, it's kind of not quite a fair fight, because I feel like if there was that second verse existed for My New Friends, that maybe they could do some interesting stuff in there, like they kind of have when they've added verses to other Pokemon songs. So it doesn't feel like a completely fair comparison, but I think Show Window is certainly, I think, more fun in some ways to listen to. They scratch similar but nearby itches. I'm not sure on this one. I don't have a definitive call on this one way or the other. There are things I really like about both of them, and maybe that's just, they do similar-ish things well. I'm not sure. I appreciate that they both exist, though.
Yeah, it's a tough choice for me, too, because, again, doing similar things well is a good description. For me, I think, like, I liked the English side well enough, but then I heard Show Window, and I was like, oh, that's, like, so it speaks to me on some level in a way that, like, it may not speak to everybody else. So it's like, for me, the dial tips slightly in that direction. But as you say, it's not an entirely fair comparison. And, maybe, as you say, a second verse or a slightly more realized version of the English track would sway me a little bit, because they're both very good.
I'd also be very interested in an English translation, not a direct literal translation, but more like a reimagining with similar themes and stuff of the Japanese version. I think that this might be one of those ones, kind of like, a small thing where it actually works really well if you get the right people behind it, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
All right, well, let's move on to our next song. It's one that's the same in both. It's Mori no Humming. It has voices, but it doesn't actually have any lyrics. And why don't you sort of talk? There's like a children's choir that does this one.
Yeah, the Hum of the Forest. It's the vocals in it are the Tokyo Metropolis Hino City Nanao Midori Elementary School Choir, who are very good singers by my ear for being in elementary school. And yeah, like they kind of, it doesn't appear to have any lyrics as much as, kind of a just structured vowel sounds mostly. But it's just very sweet and haunting in some places, and beautiful kind of background chorus of angel voices.
It is definitely pleasant. I think I enjoyed, like, as a point of comparison, Wrapped Up in Light from the Celebi Voice of the Forest movie that comes in towards the end there. I think that one, was a little more melodic, has a little bit more of an impact, even though they have similar things going on. Spoiler alert for both movies, kind of, and stuff like that. So I think I kind of still prefer that one, which eventually would become Celebi's theme when Celebi returned. Well, it returns in this movie, but they don't use that theme, strangely. It returns in the Zoroark movie, and they do bring that back. So I think that one I like a little more than this one. It's a nice addition, I suppose. although it may not mesh as well as maybe some folks would like. We'll talk more about sort of that aspect of it later in the discussion, I think. Anything else you want to say about that one?
I'm not sure. Like it's a track I think I'd like as background music. Um and definitely a track that works extremely well for this scene. Um I kind of prefer, I think, this for this particular the particular way it was used, it not being so melodic. Just again, it's the forest humming, it's not the forest belting out loudly. So for me, I think I kind of like it in that respect, to just kind of be its sort of pleasant yet unstructured self.
I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It's not a bad song by any stretch of the imagination. There was good effort put into it. All right, well, we got another divergence here. This is the song that plays right before the movie ends, technically speaking. There's a split here. So on the English side, we have "See What I See," performed sort of by Ben Dixon. We'll kind of get into that. And then the Japanese side, we have "Strange and Wonderful Creatures." I have what? Totasu Matsumoto as the person there. So this is a bit odd. Let's start on the English side, as we've been doing. Like I said, this is the song that plays as Coco is leaving the village. And it also has a reprise, this English one does, towards the end of the end credits in piano form. It's a very reflective song, I feel like. I also noticed that it kind of has like two different like portions to it. I don't know if movements, they're a little too short to really be movements, but they're definitely an A section and a B section. I don't know, Anne, what were your kind of thoughts on this one?
Um, like, yeah, it's kind of like that sense of, um, I don't know a better way to say it other than A section and B section, really, but like a sense that it's trying to tell two very different sentiments in the same song. Um, and trying to find a way to blend them, which kind of could work really well for like all the complex emotions that are happening in this scene with people, um, a community that Coco hadn't been allowed to be a part of, and now he's leaving, and everything that just happened, and being of two worlds. So it's like I don't know how intentional that all is, but the idea that it's trying to communicate a lot of different things musically, um, for again something that is a very complex, there are multiple sides to that scenario for all the characters. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe the splitting is appropriate given that we have Coco at the end of the movie decides that, not unlike Ash, he wants to kind of go on a journey. Although he's been thinking about it before he met Ash, but he wants to see things outside of the general area there. And maybe that's part of the reason there. I do need to give this one. This is one I definitely need to give more listens. But one thing I wanted to mention, if you look at the end credits, it says, vocals by Ben Dixon. But if you listen both in the movie itself and the version in the end credits, there's no lyrics. There's no voices whatsoever in this thing. So I don't know exactly. Maybe this was like a last minute change before, like after the end titles were produced. But before it went out to Netflix, they decided to make this change for some reason. I guess I should probably try. I think this might be something that Ed is willing to talk about, or Ben, or whatever. What exactly happened there? If they had some sort of weird issue production-wise or stuff like that. It is a nice tune. I will give it that.
Yeah, maybe they.
But I need to listen to it more to so,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
it might be one of the things. But I'm sure we're all curious. What were those lyrics? And maybe we'll find out at some point. You never know. Um, all right. Well, let's talk about "Strange and Wonderful Creatures," the Japanese song in here. I did listen to this. I remember I have notes written down for all these songs. I think I put down it has a kind of a revolving feel with piano, guitars, and strings. And maybe you can do a little bit better job describing it than I did.
I don't know if I can describe it musically much better, but yeah, kind of a just not lullaby-ish, but like something about it that kind of just lulls you into a rhythm and a comforting sort of sense, I guess, of musicality, which makes sense with the lyrics it has, which are very repeating. It doesn't seem so, like, looking at it, an English translation of it, but if you kind of look at the structure of the Japanese lyrics, like, there's a lot of repetition that goes on here, using a lot of the same words and a lot of the same sounds, and that's kind of cool. Lyrically, it's definitely from the point of view of the Zarud dad and kind of the strange and wonderful creatures that are children, that are humans, and like, what does it mean to be a parent and a child, and like, I want to be with you forever, but no matter where you are, I'll always be your dad, and kind of how he's grown as a person because he's raised a strange and wonderful creature that he does not always understand, but has enriched his life.
Okay, I was going to ask you. I did look up or English translations for some of these. Since there were so many of them, it was kind of hard to store so much information in the relatively short time that I had to work through all of this. I did listen to them a fair bit. I did like the style of this one. As far as choosing a favorite here, these ones are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of askew in a way that makes them very difficult to compare.
Yeah.
Especially since, we mentioned the lyrics. Those definitely exist on the Japanese side. English side? So I'm hoping somewhere out there's a version that'll have lyrics or something like that, that we get to listen to at some point. So this one, I'm kind of gotta just plop down a question mark on. There are things I like about both songs. Neither one of them, I think, is so on the nose or so fitting that I think I can put it above the other. I don't know. Perpendicular is kind of a thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mind, because on the one hand, I'm a little bit leaning towards the English track by Ben Dixon. Well, not sung by Ben Dixon, but just because, like, thinking about my experience with the movie, I'm thinking about, like, do I want lyrics here? And I'm not sure I do. But again, having not seen it in Japanese, that I don't know if it's fair for me to decide that yet without having heard it. And the Japanese Strange and Wonderful Creatures is also very sweet and touching. And I am kind of a lover and a proponent of the anime character song. So
yeah.
It's a tough call. It really is.
Yeah, it's sort of like they almost don't have enough overlap, even though they're in the same scene and they clearly have similar intentions. There's just not enough to really say there, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, no, they're like so different in ways that it's not easy to like compare them, because they both bring you very different things, but both very different good things. So
all right, well, we got one more song to sort of talk about. So for the end credits, at least the first portion of it, there are two songs. But for the end credits, on the English side, we have No Matter What. Sin comes back for this one. And then we have I'm Home and Welcome Back from Kayla Kimura. I'm never good with the Japanese names. Anna's always better at that. That's one reason I brought her into these discussions, to be honest. But again, we're going to start on the English side. No Matter What from Sin. I put down, I don't know if I'm using this term correctly, but I put down a genre of glitch pop, which maybe is not glitchy enough to count as that. But there are interesting things like some dog noises, some banging of pots and pans maybe is what that is. I'm not sure, a metal sheet of some sort in there. and that's just the instrumentation. And what kind of struck you on that end?
It kind of had a very, like, again, the instrumentation you're describing is not stereotypically jungle, but it gives me the jungle vibe in the sense that it is like the instruments they're using are evocative. Like if they're banging some metal together, like that strikes something inside you. That's a sound that makes you feel something. And like it feels very like the style of music is not garage band, but that sense of like, oh, this is exciting. The instruments we're using and the ways we're making the percussive beat is something that feels very free and very like very nature driven, and like the dogs barking or whatever, like it's calling up animals and nature and like the passions in our souls that are not, you know, in traditional pop music necessarily. So like there's something about it that again just feels very open and free, and in that sense kind of reflects a little bit of jungle and a little bit of like the life that Coco is leading, which it, you know, again he is technically a human, but he's been living in a very different world that's, you know, not the same structure as the society Ash is living in. So the music kind of gives that sense of like freedom and anarchy and like there's a wide world to explore, and it's not all polished and rhythmic in the way that we're used to in pop music. So there's something about that that I kind of think works very well.
Yeah, and even just having, you know, real world animal noises in there is kind of interesting rather than someone doing a Pokemon voice. Not that we never get that. I think it's occasionally used. I think it's, if they do, it's usually like a stock sound thing, which this quite likely is too. I don't know that Sin, if she has a dog or or one of the other folks there recorded that. You know, people have done interesting things in there, but there's certainly dog sounds and sound effect libraries, you know, music production libraries. So that wouldn't be that strange. Let's talk about some of the lyrics. One of the things it talks about is, one of the lyrics I want to call out is like a misfit, which is towards the beginning there, which certainly applies to a lot of the characters in this, you know, both Dada Zarudi being sort of a semi-outcast living sort of in a netherworld in between the Zarudi and the human population. Coco, of course, occupies a somewhat similar space. And then we have, let's see, the ending sequence features a couple of different Pokemon of the jungle, one of them being Cramorant, the comic relief Pokemon of Sword and Shield. So, which appears several other times in the movie, and I couldn't help, just because it's right there in front of me. I just kind of saw that. I assume you sort of caught that one, Anne.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely it's a line that applies to a lot of characters in here, and you can like broaden it up to like Ash and Pikachu, and like the friendship and the connection they have always been a little bit misfitty in the world around them. Like Ash even says, like, when I said my, you know, we talked to the other kids about my dream, they laughed at me and they made me feel like I didn't fit in. And then you've got the bad guy of this movie, Zed, who, for all he is the bad guy and we're not supposed to sympathize with him because he does very wrong things, feels like a little bit of a misfit because he's like, no, I'm right. This is right. Why is nobody else getting this? And again, I don't want to sympathize with him too hard, but if he had made better choices about those feelings, like this is a song that could apply to him. And yeah, like Team Rocket, always kind of different, feels like a misfit, was born to be someone who sticks out. All three of those guys are definitely, this could apply to them. So it's definitely a multifaceted section of the lyrics.
All right. Another lyric I wanted to bring up here is that a couple of the lines in each verse end with the phrase "no doubt," which I'm not sure precisely why that was included, except that I don't think this is something that's used when localizing the series these days so much. But I know that maybe it was 5th or 6th gen. A lot of times, Ash in the English dub would end a phrase with the phrase, or one of his lines with the phrase "no doubt." I don't know if that's intentional, it's kind of a byproduct of how they decided to do the localization there when they have like a vastly, like a couple extra syllables and they can't come up with a good natural way or, stuff like that. They might tack something to the front or the ends there. And I don't, like I said, I'd love to know if that was intentional or what, or if it's just a stylistic choice they made independently or what. I don't know. Anne, anything you wanted to bring up there?
I mean, the cynic in me is just like, I probably just used it because it rhymes. But like, I hadn't noticed that. Like, I don't think I even realized that Ash had this verbal little tick of his. So that's interesting. And, if there's a connection, that's fantastic. And I love it. Deep down, I don't think there really was because it's kind of common, but that's a beautiful connection to make. And whether it was intentional or not, the fact that we can draw a connection to some things in the anime is very neat.
Yeah. So if I ever get a chance to talk to one of the writers, I might ask them that one. Let's see. The only other thing here is you had mentioned the child perspective, which sort of stands out both kind of against the Sin song from the opening, which is much more from the parent perspective. Which I think makes a nice compliment in that particular case. But speaking of the Japanese song, let's talk about I'm Home and Welcome Back. First of all, tell us a little bit about the singer, and then tell us a little bit about the song as well.
Yeah, so Kimura Kaela, she's singer, model, entertainer, personality. She does a lot of things. She's very famous in Japan. And let's see, her father was British, so she's kind of got a little bit of multiculturalism in her family. Like apparently when growing up, she spoke English, but has since forgot almost all of it. So pity there, but that's still kind of cool. Again, she's got kind of an international presence in her life. She's the reason she's on my radar is because she had a very famous radio show for a while, and that's how Perfume, my favorite band that we've talked on this show in other Pokemon related discussions, got their start through her because she just kind of hyped them so well. Yeah, she's just been in the entertainment industry since like the very early 2000s and is still going strong in various ways, either as a singer, either as a model, a host of various television or radio shows, and singing. And later, like in life, she married Nagayama Eita, and they have children together. And she's so just living a very cool life in Tokyo, and just a wide career for this woman. I'm pretty sure like a lot of people who are into Japanese music and Japanese culture probably actually have an idea of who Kimura Kaela is, or have, at least if they don't know her, touched a lot of the entertainment she's worked on.
Well, that was a lot about her. What about the song? I did listen to it, and well, I'll give my opinion of it a little bit later, but why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm Home, Welcome Back is, or You're Home, Welcome Back, whichever. It kind of speaks to a lot of the old movie ending themes we'd have on the Japanese side, where it's like, this also could work as a single independently of Pokemon. But it's kind of about a life that two people have together, and like the love that one person has for the other, and wanting like to wish them all the best in the world. Like, may you always have joy, may you never feel lonely, make friends out there in the world. And the thing that's going to connect us is that you say, I'm home, tadaima, I say, welcome back, okaeri. And so it could very much be a romantic relationship, but it also could be a parent and child relationship. And I think that's kind of what they're leaning hard into for this movie, is the idea that kids grow up, they go to school, they leave the nest, and a parent will wonder, like, how many more times am I going to be able to prepare our lunch together? How many times am I going to be able to, like, you know, let you cry on my shoulder and hug you or stroke your hair or whatever? But sooner or later, you'll go off out of my sight, but you can always come back and I will always welcome you home. And like, we will always be connected by that thing we share that brings you back and that lets me welcome you. So it's a very sweet, kind of bittersweet song about caring about someone deeply, but knowing that, you know, life doesn't always keep two people together physically, but you can be connected in other ways.
Yeah, that was more or less what I got from writing the Japanese and English translation that I found. This is more from the parent perspective. Like I said, whereas the English thing is from the child perspective, although it does also have on the English a parent perspective song. As far as the instrumentation, a lot of guitar work, both electric and acoustic in here, which is I guess a nice blend. To be kind of honest, although I absolutely recognize the production value and the enthusiasm of the singer and stuff like that, and she is quite talented, this is kind of like the opening song Coco, one that didn't excite me a lot for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just the language barrier and stuff like that. I kind of liked it, but it didn't wasn't super amazing to me or anything like that. So I guess if we're going to go straight to a decision from there, no matter what, I also think actually no matter what, just in my mind, I know that I think I'm Home and Welcome Back. I think that might have actually, the end sequence might actually have been structured around it or vice versa, or edited around it or something. But I think tonally, no matter what, goes better with the ending credits sequence and the various Pokemon popping in and out and stuff like that. So I'm kind of giving the personal preference here to no matter what. But Anne, what are your kind of thoughts here?
I think I'm kind of with you in that, like, personal preference in general, like song to song, no matter what. Like, I just really love that song, and it definitely under the ending credits fits better. I'm a little, like, there's a part of me that, like, has a hand still in the other pocket because I'm Home, Welcome Back is, like, as you say, fits the theme of the movie and kind of like that last plot scene that we end on very well. And, like, being that Kimura Kaela is a mother, like, there's a part of that comes through in her performance of some of these lyrics. And like I'm personally, like, the words tadaima and okaeri, like, have a meaning for me as, like, Japanese words, in a way that, you know, sometimes when you're learning a foreign language, like, it just becomes data, but, like, those words have, like, a very visceral connection to me. So, like, when I hear them, I'm like, oh, that means something to me beyond just, oh, I know what that translates to in English. I don't know if that made sense, but, like, so for me, like, there's a part of me that's, like, always going to love this song. So I think I'm with you no matter what, like, edges out, but I, like, am always holding on to I'm Home, Welcome Back and dragging with me.
Yeah. So whatever your decisions are, or your preferences are, or, you know, ones you can't decide on, like we really couldn't with that next to last one there, that, like, yeah, we can sort of say what they're about and what they have, but actually, you know, ranking them was nigh impossible. Please let us know. We always love to hear your feedback, and we'll try and include that in a future discussion. You can leave a comment on this video, or you can drop us an email at pokepress@gmail.com. All right. Well, still plenty more musical stuff to talk about before we give our overall opinion. As usual, there is a score that goes with this movie. It is more or less kept from the Japanese side. The Japanese side has some of the folks you would expect. Shinji Miyazaki, Rei Ishizuka, who's worked in the last couple movies, Kenta Higa Shioji, maybe I got that kind of close. He's worked on The Power of Us, and I guess Princess Connect, which is some other anime. One interesting name that they brought in was Shota Kageyama, which I think folks will know is someone who's worked off and on with the Pokemon video games and the main series. I think he may have started working around the time of Diamond and Pearl, but I'm not entirely sure on that one. But he also contributed some to the score as well. Now, just to sort of give my honest opinion here, I do not think the score to this movie is bad. And I think it might even be a tad bit better than some of the more recent ones. However, if there is some sort of like magical thing to it that certain folks who really love Shinji Miyazaki's work really love, I, to be quite honest, do not hear it. I'm not saying he's a bad composer, more that the score that's been presented here is, at least to me, kind of the weakest musical aspect of it. The songs went very hard into an energetic and more jungly direction than the score did. So I'm not saying he's terrible, but, I might have considered rolling the dice and saying, if Ed Goldfarb had more time, I might say, let's see what he can come up with on the score portion of this. I don't know. Anne, what are your kind of thoughts?
Well, I think what I'm about to say is like gonna speak for itself. So like, I put this movie on, and in my mind, I was like, I'm going to have to do a podcast on it. Let's pay real close attention to the score and take notes. And so in the beginning, I was like, okay, there are a couple moments where it's like, that's cool. Like the Song of the Zarude was like, yes. And then like they kind of had that scene where he's leaving the troop and like they're going to, see the elder and all that. And I was listening to it like, I don't know if I love this. It's okay. It's not hurting anything, but I don't know if I love it. And then, Always Safe started and I was back on board. And then shortly after, like music was the furthest thing from my mind. And I think again, that just kind of speaks for itself. Like either the plot was that good that I didn't care about the score, or the score, there was nothing super special about the score to grab my attention. It wasn't until the very end, some of those tracks near the end, like Ambition and Truth and Protecting the Forest, A Vain Struggle, where I kind of started to get back into being like, oh yeah, music is a part of this movie, and started to pay attention to not just the songs, but the backing track. So I'm kind of with you in that, like, I don't feel the score was particularly special. I do think there were moments that were special, and like, had I more, well, not necessarily had I more time, but like, I think over time, I will maybe be able to have a better way to break down like who of these guys did what, because I often feel that there's a lot of old guard in Pokemon, and like the things that have been the most like the biggest changes in the past several years and the most interesting changes have come when they've kind of brought in a new director or a new writer or a new animator to the animation team. Like those are the moments where like you start seeing a little bit of new life kind of breathe into the franchise. And I think music is a place where they kind of could benefit from starting to do that. And I hope that all these other credits besides Shinji Miyazaki on the score is a sign that like they're willing to take advantage of Shinji Miyazaki's experience and talent, but like are willing to maybe start trying some new things and getting some new people trained up and able to do this job and take the show in new directions. I hope. Well,
to mention something related to that, on the main anime, although they do use some of Shinji Miyazaki's compositions and stuff in there, sort of the main composer on the Japanese side for the TV show, I forget his name, but he came in within the last few years, I think with Journeys. And, I've listened to some of his stuff. I think it is a bit, I do enjoy it, I think, a bit better, but it would be unfair if we didn't at least consider other possibilities here as to why the scores, at least, Anne and I are largely in agreement. If you think they're still going great, that's, you're entitled to your opinion. I
And you're
absolutely,
winning. Like,
more or less, but,
long out of life.
but I think Anne and I are kind of in agreement that we would like to see something more aggressive, more ambitious out of that. And part of me wonders, maybe it's not just the composition. It could also be the orchestra. Now, I don't think that the orchestras that they use to make these scores are untalented. That is not what I think the actual issue is. What I think may be happening, or that they don't care about the material, I think it may actually be the opposite. I think they might be the weight of the Pokemon franchise and its reputation worldwide as, the highest grossing media franchise in human history, may actually be producing music that is a little too safe in terms of scoring elements, and a performance that is a little too safe. And it might, one thing they could try that I've suggested is that when a movie is based in a certain part of the world or a certain city or a certain country or whatever, is, obviously this would have been very difficult with Secrets of the Jungle with the pandemic and whatnot. But maybe in the future, they can contact like a symphony orchestra in that city or in that country or something like that, and have them, get them into a studio and have them perform the score for the movie, which I think would be a really cool way, and it would give sort of a fresh set of folks a chance to work with the material and stuff. And I think you'd get something that would maybe make the movie actually give it a better sense of place, which has kind of been my problem with the last, I don't know, I sort of draw the line after movie 10, after the Dark Ride movie, that things sort of go on a more and more vanilla direction. With a few exceptions, like obviously the Hoopa movie. And I think shaking things up there, you might need to try a few different things, I think would be a good idea. Because we know we've gotten some really neat stuff in the past, like with the Dark Ride movie, like with the Latias and Latios movie is an absolutely fantastic score. Even the non-accordion stuff in there is really, really good. But those were some of my thoughts. Anne, bless you. I did have you try and do some research to get sort of a Japanese opinion on some of these things.
Yeah.
You unfortunately weren't able to track down like any Japanese newspaper reviews of the last couple Pokemon movies or blogs or stuff, but you did try to find some reviews on like Amazon JP and stuff like that. What did you find?
Yeah. As you said, the news outlet that I found was mostly basically just this thing is releasing and this date, and this is maybe a person of note who worked on it. But I did, the voices of the people. I found a couple. There's one for the birth of Mewtwo, that I thought was interesting because I feel like this person would get along with you, Steven. He or she, they had a lot to say about the mixing and the mastering of that, the track. Let's see, that kind of went over my head a little bit. But there's a track, the birth of Mewtwo. It's like the same song in both movies. The sound quality has become much better in time compared to those recorded originally because of advanced current technology. Mastering here is almost no complaint. However, Birth of Mewtwo was a dissatisfaction from the original recording of the translation is something like rocket group oral background and arrangement in Satoshi battle determination. Like, I'm so sorry, everybody. But he feels like he thought originally that like I guess the original movie, like it was a mistake of the technology to record. But like this time it's digitally remastered from the master tape, which means that the problem was probably with the person who created the track or something. So like he had a lot to say. So There are definitely a lot of people in Japan, it seems, who have opinions, just like we do, about music mastering and like very minutia. But more to the point of like how the music actually made you feel. There's an Amazon review for let's see, The Power of Us, of a person who says that they kind of bought a soundtrack every summer. Like they watched the movie in the summer and then bought the soundtrack, or vice versa. And then the year of Power of Us, listened to it several times, but compared to last year's soundtrack, it's they kind of have the impression that there's a lot of gentle songs that feel very well rounded overall, which isn't really a compliment to them. Like they feel like that's nice, but there's no killer tune. And one of the examples they bring up is like the theme of the Erasion. But they do say that the sound quality of the orchestra is very beautiful, and that the songs often have like a healing feeling to them. So they like the soundtrack, but think some of the previous work is better. But for contrast, from Billy, there's a review that says Shinji Miyazaki is indeed the master of soundtracks of Pokemon series and a role model for this person. So a bit of a spectrum of people. Again, a lot of very different opinions, just like ours.
I suppose so. I mean, we talked a lot about the score in the last couple of movies. Especially since like during the XY and I Choose You, they did replace most, if not all, of the Japanese score. That's kind of what I came up when I was referring to, kind of the roll of the dice and see what Ed could come up with. That's kind of sort of what I was referring to. They still do replace a lot of the score elements in the TV show. And, while you are, as a listener, entitled to prefer, mix and match, whatever, I get the feeling that it's like either a nothing to a lot of folks, or maybe in some cases it pales in comparison to their, I don't know. Like some of this is going back to Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, since there you have several points of comparison. You're comparing it both to the, here in the West, you're comparing it both to the 98 Japanese version score, which does have some significant differences, and also to the 99 dub score, And I did see folks in the reviews I read in English of that who sort of said, yeah, this new score, it's not as good as either of those. And there were a handful of folks who didn't, who did like the new score, and I got a feeling it wasn't just because they had kept it from the Japanese version. This is admittedly kind of a tough nut to crack with all of that. But, and to be honest, the opinion on Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution is largely meh overall, not just in the music department. That missed folks' expectations in a number of areas, sometimes to the point where it made them angry, sometimes not. Sometimes to the point where they just said, I'm just going to watch the one I grew up with, or even the original Japanese version. It's like, yeah. And so I don't think there's the current score paradigm has, this is going to be fun to edit. The current score paradigm definitely has its fans. I get the feeling, just from talking to folks, I haven't had a chance to talk to too many folks in person about Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution because, of course, of the pandemic. But from discussions I've had beforehand and stuff, I don't think I love the Japanese score just the way it is really, like, there's a decent number of people in it. I don't feel it's a huge percentage of the overall market. We do have a fair bit of a disadvantage there. Remember, this is a show that's aimed at kids, many of whom are too young to get on the internet. So you're not going to see them on Facebook or Twitter, at least officially. So I don't know. Like I said, I think that the score here in Secrets of the Jungle, they need to start taking some more risks, because the vocal songs went very much in a wholehearted, or like a whole, I'm trying to think of the words I'm trying to think of the right words here. like a full-throated into, like, even on the Japanese side, there's some stuff that really went into the jungle theming much more and went much more emotional than the score did. And the score doesn't have to follow that 100%. And it wasn't such a difference that it was, ruin the movie or anything, but it was enough of a difference that you noticed it. That I noticed it. I think Anne noticed it. I think a lot of folks noticed it. And I get the feeling when people are complimenting the music on this movie, I've seen very few bad things about the music in this movie compared to, like I said, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution got some compliments, a lot of and a fair amount of this one has mostly been either not mentioned at all or mentioned positively. I still get the feeling they're talking more about the vocal songs than they are about the score. Mm. And I feel like in a franchise where we have, you look at the games and the main games, the side games, and it seems like they're doing such interesting work, such thematic. Not everything is radio worthy, as I would call it. But you listen to stuff like in Sword and Shield, like in Pokemon Masters, those are some of the best ones. Mystery Dungeon, even stuff, maybe not so much Pokemon Go that has somewhat different music demands as a game you might be playing while crossing the street. But I feel like the scores to the anime should be maybe, the demands of scoring a TV show or a movie are a little bit different than a video game. But I feel there should be more correlation. They should be more in line tonally than they are, and stylistically than they are. And does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't know if I agree as strongly in some areas, but it definitely all makes sense, and definitely I agree in the sense that I would like to see them try some new things. What those new things are is, up to them, and I can only hope that, in the sense that I've been talking for many years about I'd like to see some new things done with plot and direction overall in the movie. And the past couple years with this alternate timeline, we've gotten some really good Pokemon plots in our movies that, for a while there we were struggling with, and general direction of the Pokemon movie was in a strange place, but they've really gotten some great movies in the past couple years. So I can only hope that that's kind of a trend that is continuing through the company, and that the music scoring will hopefully start following that suit. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't want to completely dunk on Shinji Miyazaki and his crew, because still I know that they've done things in prior movies that I've enjoyed a lot more than what we get here more recently. But I think, just like with the sort of the plot and stuff that made them do this alternate universe, the movies were in a space that I think is a textbook example of you become so risk averse that not taking a risk becomes the risk. That if you don't take a risk, you're just going to keep getting, some fraction of what you got before, and and eventually that's not going to be enough. And basically they decided, after Volcanion and Mechanical Marvel, or maybe even before that they decided, okay, we need to shake some things up here. And they did that with the plot. I think the score needs some sort of shake-up. Whether that's bringing in all new people, that might be a little bit drastic, but just picking a new direction and a new philosophy. And, like I said, maybe doing some of those things. Because, suppose, we talked about the Power of Us. That's set in San Francisco. San Francisco is a city with immense musical history. Everything from Creedence Clearwater Revival to Metallica to, all sorts of things. The hippie movement of the 1960s that you could pull from to create, different motifs or different characters and stuff like that. And I think it would be really interesting. Same thing, Genesect movie, set in New York City, one of the most culturally diverse cities in the world. Similar things for some of the places, the movies that are set in Europe. Every European country has its own musical history and instruments, and maybe they bring in a little bit of that, like There's a little Greco-Roman stuff in Arceus and the Jewel of Life. And Arceus' theme is kind of nice there. But I feel I want to go harder. Like main games do. Maybe not quite as much. It doesn't have to be like, there is one track in The Power of Us right near the beginning during the opening credit sequence that really gets out there. It doesn't need to be quite that much necessarily. But I think it would integrate better with the franchise as a whole if they push things a little harder. Sorry. Didn't know if you had a response.
No, I mean, you said it well. Like, there's...
Yeah. So, I mean, if you like Shinichi Miyazaki, what he's currently putting out, you're really entitled to your opinion. But I think there would be a benefit to doing something more aggressive. And I think in this movie, Secrets of the Jungle, the vocal songs absolutely on the Japanese and Western sides went there. Not always with the raw jungle elements, in some cases very much so. I'm not going to claim that they added all this stuff in as soon as the test audience survey data from Netflix from Mewtwo Strikes Back came in. Oh, we're in trouble if we. And I don't know the sequence of events there. It might have prodded them along a little bit, make some changes in there. But score-wise, I think we need to see more in the future. I don't think that the movies are in any danger of falling off the face of the earth or anything like that, but I see it as another opportunity to improve another aspect of them.
I like what you said there, like another opportunity, because I think both of us would agree, regardless of what happens with the score, we are going to see these movies and we are going to have a great time and we are going to enjoy them. And that's so again, if you love these things the way they are, that's great. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's an opportunity, I think, for it to be more. And I think none of us would be hurt to see them try more and different and new and continue to improve.
Okay, well, I think it's about the amount of time we want to spend in that particular area. So let me just over to overall. So let me find a good thing here. Oh, look. Let's see. Oh, we got some comments. I'm sorry I didn't get these in earlier. Filippo Depot, let me just take a quick look at this and see if we want to work this. We didn't have anything for feedback yet. Interesting. So, okay, I would normally less than. So I wanted to bring in a little bit from Filippo Depot. As I recall, he's a pretty big Miyazaki fan.
He does have some. I say old guard. I don't necessarily mean he's an old man. He's been there a while.
Is relatively new, but let's see. I'm not sure how we're going to edit all this in. So this is a bit hearsay. I don't have an official source on this, but it sounds like based on what Filippo is posting in here, he seems to think that there is some controversy within the management side between different factions about what direction to go on with the score. And if any of them happen to be listening, like I said, I think I want things to push harder. And this film, granted, there was this little thing called a pandemic and a date change for it. It didn't do super great in Japan. They had to release it, but that may just be because it released at Christmas instead of in the summer, and pandemic again. So we'll see where things go from here. Like I said, I'm not angry. I just feel like we could be doing. Sorry, That's. I'm not involved personally with this. I try not to be possessive. I feel like these could be musically more than what they are. All right, well, with that being said, let's go with sort of our overall opinions about the music here. I have a few additional thoughts of some interesting ideas and other stuff like that. First off, I want to say, we did kind of bag on the score a fair bit. It is probably the least impressive musical part, at least in my opinion, of this movie. Certainly the one that went for it the least. That's not very fair either. I try to be very careful with my language here because I don't want to give the impression I hated the score or anything like that. Give me a second to rethink that. like the score obviously did not go as hard as most of the vocal songs on either side did. And I think that as a result, the soundtrack, well, the vocal songs especially are very interesting, and they do take some weight off the score. They sort of distract. Well, every word I come up with here, I have to admit, sounds kind of wrong. And there. Okay, so this is going to be. I knew this would be a longer one and not much fun in editing. So. Let's see here. So let me kind of start rewind there a bit. So I do think the insert songs really do add a lot to it. And to be honest, we did kind of bag on the score, but having the insert songs, I think, takes some weight off of there. That's probably one of the things that really didn't benefit the score in Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, is that because those English songs weren't there, that for a lot of folks that made them concentrate more on the score that was and put even more of a burden on it. But in any case, I did really like the vocal songs here. That was still a jumble. I'm trying to figure out how to integrate everything I want to say here. I have lots of thoughts, and they're all crisscrossing each other. Let's see. So I do think, the insert songs, they might have taken some pressure off of the score in terms of the musical reputation of the movie, but I think they were generally a good addition, although both sets of vocal songs, whichever version you're watching, I feel they didn't mess so badly that they seemed completely out of place or took you out of the movie for the most part. But they didn't meld super well, like maybe the elements in like the fifth movie, where you have vocal songs, you have several different instrumental styles for different parts of the movie, and despite being distinct, they kind of work together more. I don't know, Anne, is that kind of the overall like vibe you got from this?
I would definitely say the vocal tracks helped the score in a lot of ways. One way, just taking some of the weight off of the score, because I think thinking back, a lot of people, myself included, would think, oh, I loved the score of Coco, because in our minds the vocal tracks are part of that. I think I would hope that they brought some extra influences and different ideas to the composers. I would also agree that the score that didn't involve the vocals was for me very forgettable, although I had a lot of moments, as I said, where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, that kind of brings me back in. So again, I feel like in some ways improvements are being made. In some ways, I think there are other opportunities they could take part of. But overall, I liked the music in this movie. Whether some parts of the score were more weak linked than others, yeah, that's up for debate. But overall, I really liked the music in this movie, and I think I'll take away fond memories of it. And in that, it's a net positive for me.
Yeah, it definitely is. And like I said, going back to score there, it felt like there were parts where it's almost like there was something underneath like a frozen pond that was about ready to break out there, but didn't quite make it. So it's not like, I don't think it's hopeless or anything like that. I think there is a possibility of, if you do have to kind of choose a different direction and a somewhat different philosophy, and stuff like that. So I did want to throw in one other thing there, another song that's not in this movie. Not that I would really expect it to be, but I think would work really well. It's a Pokemon song. It originated as one. I wanted to go all the way back to the soundtrack to Pokemon 2000. And, we kind of covered this song last year when I interviewed the engineer that mixed it. But I wanted to sort of float out there. And do you think the song They Don't Understand, maybe with some readaptation and, obviously a new arrangement and stuff, could somehow have been used in conjunction with this movie?
Yes. I can think of 15 different reasons. There's a lot in that song that could apply to Coco versus his family, Dada Zaruto versus the elders and the rest of them, Ash versus humanity. There's even Zed. and the other scientists and the good scientists versus him. Yes, there's a lot of places where that, and like the idea of a generational gap. Yes.
Yeah. Just in case you're not aware, They Don't Understand is part of a subgenre of pretty much Western Pokemon songs. I know of no Japanese equivalent to this that are the adults don't get Pokemon subgenre, along with blah 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 from the second movie soundtrack, in which like it started off, I believe, as something as a romantic boyfriend girlfriend type of song, and that's where the only we know what it means and all that stuff comes from. And I guess the guy's son, Steve Diamond's son Cole, gave them the idea of reworking it into a Pokemon song, and so it was. And then that song was in turn performed by Dream Street. It's on the second movie soundtrack. It's got lines like, we got our own special language that only we can speak, and only we know what it means, and and understand Pokemon. I kind of, if I had, it's something I only realized sometime after the first time when I watched the movie, maybe during the second time, I'm not sure exactly. So I can't guarantee that if I had for some crazy reason been hired as a consultant, I would have thought of this during production.
Can you imagine?
But I think that actually, in hindsight, if they were going to bring back an older Pokemon song, that might have been the one. And I kind of wanted to sort of leave on that as sort of a thought to ponder. It would have to be reworked a fair bit, and some lyrics would probably have to be changed. But boy, I think they could have made something of that. So not faulting them terribly for not doing it. It may not even have been possible. Obviously one of the members of Dream Street passed away from COVID last year, so that bringing the band back together might not even have been an option even if they reused the song. But kind of wanted to toss that out there. And any other thoughts or things or ideas you wanted to toss out there, things they could have tried but didn't, or?
I can't think of anything else they could have tried but didn't. I like the potential, and They Don't Understand. I'm intrigued by the idea of a world where they hire you and me on as consultants to a Pokemon movie, and what monstrosity we would create. But
I would seriously consider such an offer. I do not expect one. But,
right. You know our emails.
All right. Well, with that out of the way, what's our next discussion? Well, obviously, like I said, we usually do a post discussion. Well, with that out of the way, what's our next discussion? Well, we will get to deconstructing Pokemon music at some point, but this has been a busy month or so for Pokemon music. Really a busy year. And so we want to cover as much as we can. And so our next thing that we want to cover is the music of Pokemon 25, the album. So yes, this came out also earlier this month, and I picked it up digitally. I picked it up on CD. I plan on picking up the vinyl when that releases in February next year for, I guess, Pokemon Day. Because I need to own it 3 times. Come on. Let's see. But I think what's going to happen there is it's not officially related to the Secrets of the Jungle movie, but they released a week apart. I think there are, in some of the songs and some of the music videos, some definite similarities to the movie. And we're going to sort of treat it as an extension of this discussion. But that is sort of our next one. We'll probably each pick out a couple songs from there to focus on. But until then, Anne, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
This is Stephen Reich. All right, folks, thanks. All right, a little bit of a pause here. Anne, do you need to take a break or something for a couple minutes or something? Or can we keep
good.
going?
I'm good. Yeah, we can keep going.
All right. Yeah, this is all going to be real fun editing. I knew we'd go extra long on this, but I think we can still get a movie discussion for 2 hours of audio or so. Or
yeah, we can get some thoughts laid down.
I mean, this is an interesting movie to discuss, no doubt about that. Even music aside, there's some things in here that are definitely worth talking about. Let me actually, I'm going to turn the gain down just a little bit more on my thing here, because I don't know if I hit the top on my little voice recorder here that I used to record my side, but I'd like to give a little extra headroom on this. All right. It shouldn't be anything I can't fix, but we'll see how it goes. All right. So yeah, movie discussion time. If you have any comments about that, go ahead and put it in. We'll try and work those in while we are going here. Yes, Filippo points out there's a definite disparity between like the vocal songs and the scores. Like they never align completely, even in the case like The Power of One, where the ending theme song is literally derived from a score element.
Right.
But it feels like they could have meshed better than they did.
Yeah, but he's right to point out, like, yeah, those things are not necessarily developed in the same room or at the same time. So
No, I have a
sometimes
feeling we'll be
fair to
referencing this
expect.
movie musically and otherwise in the future. But yeah, let's go ahead and do our movie discussion. Thank you very much for coming in, Filippo. We definitely appreciate that as always.
It's very nice.
All right. Okay, well, as much time as we spent talking about the music, there's still a movie here. I think sort of the big thing we should focus on here is the Dada Zarud. I keep wanting to say it in 3 syllables. It is only 2. And Coco relationship, which is, the heart, almost literally, of the film. And it's a pretty good relationship. I mean, Ash is kind of almost relegated. He's a point of view character in this one, which he kind of is in a lot of the movies. But especially in this one, the story is not so much about him. And I felt like the 2 characters, Dada Zarud and Coco, got along and had a very interesting, back and forth and stuff like that. And how did you feel about, that was really the crux of the movie. How did you feel about it?
I have a lot of feelings. I have so many feelings. Yeah, no, this was a really interesting movie, and I really loved that they kind of brought up that Papa Zarud didn't really have a good father role model growing up. And like, so a lot of his like, I guess I just don't know how to be a dad. And like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like that kind of spoke to me a bit, because my father also kind of grew up in a family where they did not have a father figure. And my mom once told me, like, when they got married and he was like, and they started having kids, that one of the things that they talked about, like, he was like, I don't know how to be a dad. I don't know how to parent these kids because I didn't have a functioning family. Like I didn't have a dad around. My mom was just doing her best. And like that kind of always struck me as interesting, because growing up I was like, oh gosh, my daddy's the best and he tucks me in. I love him. He's perfect. And yeah, he did a really great job with us. So like there's a kind of, I like that sense of like Papa Zarud is kind of doubting himself a lot and not sure what he's doing right, if he's doing anything right. And from Coco's point of view, Coco's like, you are the best dad. I love you. You are giving me all the emotional things I need, even though we're having a little bit of conflict. Like, we are still a very tightly knit family unit. So that's something that spoke to me and I thought was very special.
Yeah, I don't want to go fully into it. The relationship with my dad is complicated for a variety of reasons. I'll just say, my parents are divorced and have been for a long time. I'm honestly much closer with my mother, which, this movie is not, bad for mothers and their children either. And I think, this is sort of a type of story that, yes, they could have done earlier in the franchise, that but has a different ring now that the franchise has been around long enough that some of the original fans have kids, are getting to that point. Some of them are even old enough to see this movie. And I think that's one reason for, like I said, why we're seeing this movie now, even though they certainly could have made it 10, 20 years ago. And there certainly were family-based aspects, particularly to like the second and third movies. Definitely had that kind of dynamic going on there. But I think that we certainly got something of a different movie because it is being made now, and that relationship, between those 2 characters, which is mirrored many times, either as a friendly relationship like between Coco and Ash, or between Ash and his mom, or Dada Zarud. He mentions, I never really knew my father. Presumably something happened to him when he was very young or something like that. So that's big there. The next thing I want to kind of talk about is the use of language in the film. Now, I don't mean there's no like this is still a Pokemon movie. There's no dirty words or anything. What I actually mean is, initially in the movie we hear Coco and Zarude and the other Zarude talking to each other, in whatever language you're watching the movie in. It's not really until Ash has an encounter directly with them and they sort of bring them in there that we sort of, they weren't really speaking, human talk there. They were talking to the other Pokemon and stuff like that. And they, Coco is as the film goes on, sort of becomes bilingual and stuff like that. One of the reviews I read, the reviews were maybe not as positive as the fan base, which is kind of to be expected, although there weren't too many of them that were really down on the movie. They seemed to at least think it was okay. But one of them said they pulled a Hunt for Red October, which I find is a very interesting comparison. Where in that thing, you hear some folks speaking Russian, and then there's sort of a weird little focus trick, and then they're speaking English. This is kind of a bit like that. What did you think of that?
I loved it. So anyone who has listened to my podcast knows the language barrier between human and Pokemon is my jam. Languages in general are my jam. Like, I will be publishing a book hopefully this next year where, like, objectively there might be a plot in there, but it's really about the language barrier. Like, this is my thing. I love how they did it, how they didn't treat, like, they just treated it like when Coco and his Dada are talking together, they talk, quote, normal. When he's talking with Ash, he's talking how Ash would talk and perceive it. It's very fascinating. I love that there are moments where you can tell that just because they said it in human language doesn't mean Coco didn't understand. Yes, no, I love a lot of things about the language and the use of language and the way people's words changed and the way the humans had prejudice towards the Pokemon during the fireworks thing, that whole debacle, because they couldn't speak the same language. And it wasn't until somebody explained the situation that they realized, oh, I guess I was a little harsh. And that is something that I bet kids and adults can relate to in the world we go in now, where when we don't understand a situation, we can be very judgmental. And often the problem is just we don't speak the same language.
I like to say that most of the world's problems are caused by either inadequate or a lack or a problem with communication. Really, that's quite true, especially like in the social media age, where things are everything's a soundbite. It seems sometimes. That's why one reason I like doing these long form discussions, even though it's way more detailed than most people will ever care about these movies. I think we come a lot closer to a more complete picture of these things than you get from a tweet or a post or whatever. All right, well let's talk about some of the plot elements in here. There's one scene that is frequently mentioned as if there's that scene in this movie, it is it's like a dash cam recording on Zed's like SUV or whatever. They have a couple of those at the company, and it's from like 10 years ago. And it shows Zed basically. I mean, this movie, one of the criticisms of it is it's a bit derivative of stuff like Tarzan, Planet of the Apes, and other stuff. There's only so many fish out of water stories out there. But I guess you could consider, maybe this part is derivative of Detective Pikachu, but I probably have to make too much fun of it because, Zed runs the couple and their child off the road. Their car catches fire, and eventually, they manage to push the kid away, and that's Coco. But Zed just sort of walks away and leaves the other folks, the mom and dad, to die. When the gas tank explodes or whatever on the vehicle. Rather, one of the darkest things we've seen in a Pokemon movie. I do wonder. There's a decent chance this movie would have gotten a PG rating had it been released to theaters in the U.S. Just kind of based on that scene. Um, what did you think of that?
Of that specifically, it's hard to say. Like, I didn't. There's a lot in this movie that, as you say, is maybe derivative of Tarzan. But again, derivative of other Pokemon movies. We've seen scientists looking for the healing spring to save humanity, and there's a scientist on board who does not care about the nature and the Pokemon. Like, we've seen a lot of these tropes. What I liked about this movie is that it presented all these things in a way that felt fresh and new and made me care. I found the Zed's, like, that whole thing where he's talking into the camera and his devolve into insanity. I found that very...
he's obviously got some sort of mental illness, which I don't want to make too much fun of. It doesn't excuse his actions, of course.
No, but he clearly could benefit from someone giving him a hand, redirecting his thoughts. But I appreciated that because it felt like, again, just a fresh take on it. Like, it's not like I want power, I want to be the best, although he kind of does. It's, I want everyone to see that I'm right. Like, he's kind of lost sight of his goal of helping humanity and his desire to prove that he's right. And that's new.
Well, he also believes that, well, if we do what I want to do, then we can, that's kind of how he justifies what he does to the couple and, even potentially their child. He could have easily killed all three of them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just thinking what an awful. I mean, this is one of the, even with all the team leads that we've seen in here, but this is see, the person I thought of with this was almost like Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. Now, she didn't obviously run people off the road who tried to go to like the SEC or to the New York Times or whatever it was. She never did anything like that. But back with her stuff, she had medical stuff that didn't do what it said it did. And like she was so convinced she could change the world that, she's willing to put other people in danger. And now it's very different kind of here where the guy is taking a very active role in offing his boss and his wife and possibly their kid, because that's what he's doing. He's trying to get the data that that his boss has said, we're not going to exploit this. I'm in charge here, whatever. It's not right to do this, and they try and obviously, I guess 10 years ago maybe it was easier to hide every trace of that or whatever. So it's a dark scene, and it surprised a lot of folks that it went there.
But as dark as it is, I think that's something that in this day and age, like we encounter those scenarios, maybe not on such a grand scale, but at a very young age, we are kind of faced with these kind of hard decisions, and people who don't always want to, as the Coco's dad said, wait and put the brakes on it and try to find a better solution and talk about it. Or the female scientist who, was going along with the plan and then was like, you know what, we have gone too far. I'm sorry, Zerudo. I'm very sorry. How can we make this right? So I think like that presents a lot of conflicts that children repeatedly encounter in a very fantastical and grandiose and scary way. But I think those are all things that as much as people were shocked it went that dark, I think your kids can relate to it more than you think they can.
Some of them definitely. So speaking of a little bit dark stuff, towards the end of the movie, there's a final confrontation between Coco and Zed, where it's not exactly clear to me what's exactly happening. This is after Coco somehow uses that voice of the forest or whatever it is to heal Dada Zarud, and then Zed, he's been thrust out of the mech he was in that gets you disabled, and he's like, but the other guy, he's still alive, and it's like it's hard to tell exactly what's happening. At one point, it seems like Coco is so angry that some characters seem to think that Coco is going to try to kill Zed, and at the same time, I've heard folks say, well, like, is he like about to commit suicide and jump off the? This is really, I mean, for a kid's, for a Pokemon movie, I mean, even if you compare to the music or Tio passing away, this is still kind of describing stuff in image, in words is a little bit difficult. But what did you think of that scene?
Overall, I liked it. Again, I am a grown adult without children, so that might not necessarily be the defining opinion on this. I agree with you that it's very difficult to put into words, and it's something that I kind of want to analyze more before I be like, okay, this is what's going on in the scene, and this is what it means. It's entirely possible that it means different things to different people. People who maybe have not felt the kind of justified rage that Coco would have been feeling in that scene might read it differently. People have not felt the things that Zed was going through might read it differently than those of us who maybe have. And that's fine, I think. Again, as a grown adult who sees a therapist weekly to sort through complex feelings, I liked it. I thought it presented a lot of really interesting emotions, and that Coco came out of it with a choice that nullified the conflict. That I was very afraid that it was going to be one of those scenarios where the villain denies everything to their dying breath and then dies, and that takes care of everything. I was very happy that Coco found a solution where the bad guy lives, and whether or not he faces justice, apparently he goes to jail, but what his sentence is, etc., that all happens off screen, and we don't care about it. And Coco made a decision that was right for him morally. Again, I'm happy with it. I think it needs some more watchings for me to have more articulate thoughts than that.
Yeah, I watched the movie twice, and I'm still not sure I completely understand the scene. Because not long before that, Ash says, we're not going to let you get rid of Coco's parents twice. And I have to wonder if I were in Ash's shoes and saw what happened there. It's like, shoot, did I just give Coco and intentionally give Coco permission to kill Zed? So yeah, at the end of the movie, you do see him. I mean, first off, someone, Team Rocket finds. Yeah, this is a bit of an awkward tradition. They finally break into his office, and he hasn't deleted this recording. I don't know if he could never bring himself to do it or to look at it again or what that is. But they keep that. Now I would have thought that if Team Rocket, if they let the headquarters organization know, hey, we got into that guy's office. Turns out that he murdered some of his coworkers. You think that the Team Rocket higher ups would be like, oh, hey, let's keep that and use that as blackmail or something like that on him. But I guess they're so disgusted by it that without comment, they sort of turn it over to the authorities without attaching their names to it. Like they put it on they put it on a flash drive or a memory card or something and slip it underneath the police station or for Officer Jenny to find. And at the end of the movie, we see he's also basically confessed it to half a dozen people in an earlier scene. So there's, it's certainly enough to probably get a warrant. With that many of his coworkers as eyewitnesses who will, So. Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic in this film, and I'm still not entirely sure what I think about it. But a bit of a turn, and I guess on a bit of a lighter note, the last couple movies, if you want to call this lighter, have been pretty tough on scientists. You look at Detective Pikachu, Anne Laurent gets presumably killed by. We don't see the glass go into her, obviously, because the hologram cuts off right as it's about to do that. And then Fuji, since we got the Mewtwo Strikes Back remake, him and his crew all get, incinerated or blown to smithereens or whatever by Mewtwo. It's interesting that Zed is the one who, despite all the horrible things he's done, it's kind of interesting because they talk about like the law of the Zaru during the thing there, and in the end, the bad guy is taken away by the law. I found that an interesting parallel in that part of the story. I guess that wasn't really that much lighter, but it's something we had to certainly address here,
Hopefully we'll get some more scientists who do good in the world and good things happen to them and are good role models to us all.
Yeah, well, maybe there's hope then for that remake of Power of One at some point. I mean, granted, Oak and Ivy don't really achieve a ton in that movie, but at least they don't make anything worse.
And they are playing their own special part in the solution of that movie.
I guess.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, in any case, going on to some other characters, although this movie is really about a father-son relationship, we kind of mentioned this. I don't know if we've said it in this discussion. I think we said it in our pre-discussion that the opening and ending themes, the opening credits and closing credits themes in both versions, Japanese and Western, are performed by women. This could have been, a very male-centric movie with virtually no female characters. I mean, obviously, yes, we just mentioned Officer Jenny at the end. I think we must see Nurse Joy because there are some scenes at the Pokemon Center. There are a couple of female scientists. The one, of course, the Coco's mom, who perishes, and then one or two of the other scientists in the current group is female as well. And like I said, I think I mentioned Dash's mom. If I didn't, she was in there as well. So, because I think, especially in this day and age, the relationship between the two of them is, well, there is a paternal, aspect to it. It still can be appreciated by it. But I did find it interesting that there is actually a lot of female, not certainly as much as like, Power of Us, where we have Risa in there as sort of the co-protagonist of that movie, one of the major things in there. So
well,
that's
I'd like to. Oh, sorry. I'd like to take a moment to point out, not every story has to have a ton of female characters. It's not necessarily unfeminist just because women aren't present. What is I think the problem that a lot of women have, rather than just there's no women, is more that the women, when they're there, how are they treated? If this is a story about a father-son, that's not necessarily a bad thing, that it's all about the dudes. What I love about this movie is that it's a movie about a father-son, but they also make some parallels to mother-son relationships. Every woman in this movie, is a very interesting character, even if they have but a small role to play. And that's great. And so I don't want anyone to think as we bring that up that there's no women in this movie, it's not feminist. It's it's a movie about a boy and his dad.
Yeah, I may have played things a little too woke there. This going back to our
no, it's good to be woke. I just want to make sure people don't get the wrong assumption from what we're saying.
Yeah, we kind of had. I'll admit I did kind of one reason I included Anne here is I didn't want for this discussion series, I didn't want everyone to be a white male. That said, Anne, I want to make it clear I do not expect you to speak for all women. If I get another person who is African American or Hispanic or whatever, I don't expect them to speak for all of that race. But I do want to include folks who have different life experiences. And I will not be perfect.
None of us are.
But I did want to point that out with this movie is that, maybe I do want to say that if this movie was made 20 years ago, earlier in the franchise, they might have been much more, we might not have had that.
I think you're right, yeah.
So, because, like I said, this is one that's for, I think families of all kinds is something here. I mean, that's kind of the point of the story is that you have a Zarude, a Pokemon, and a human that has chosen to basically adopt And I think that's an important point to bring up here.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess at this point we just got to go in. I've been talking for over 2 hours. It'll edit down a little bit shorter. These are never fun to edit, but it is usually worth it in the end. What do you overall think of this movie, like ranking-wise, experience-wise? I mean, obviously, I think both of us would have loved to have seen this in an actual movie theater, but circumstances simply did not permit it. Japan is kind of lucky if they got anything out of that. I don't know how much video streaming is a thing there. Like, I know that during the pandemic, they've done, with some of the movies, they've done like premium streaming offerings where you spend an extra fee to get, like, they've done that for like Trolls World Tour, Scoob, a couple other ones, Mulan, and stuff like that. Possibly in part based on the reception of Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution in terms of viewership. But I don't know, where's this kind of, that was a bit of a ramble there, but where does this actually rank in there? Do you think, like, is this, I think both of us really like this movie.
Uh-huh.
But like overall, I think maybe of the reboot trilogy, I think Power of Us like might be the one I appreciate the most. I mean, I don't have kids, so not I hope that someday when I do, that my years of running a Pokemon League will at least have prepared me at least slightly for it. So maybe I can't relate to this as much as I would like. But I do think it's pretty well made, and it's certainly worth discussing. I think we'll be coming back to this in some forms, referencing it and things like that. So definitely one of the better movies. And as far as I'm concerned, the reboot trilogy, they're all at least good. Certainly better in my mind than the X and Y generation, and generally speaking, the black and white generation before it, where I think is where they started to notice that things were getting a little too dull.
Mm-hmm.
But Anne, you're entitled to your opinion, so go ahead.
Oh, well, luckily I'm not going to go off the rails here. Like, I also really liked this movie. Yeah, I think definitely of the alternate timeline, this is my favorite. It's kind of hard for me to rank it together with the anime timeline, just because to me, I very much see that Ash and alternate timeline Ash as two very different characters. But oh gosh, this movie is so good. This movie did so much that surprised me. It did so much that I appreciate. And it did like the one thing that I always love is like they treated the Pokemon not like they were animals, but like they are a different culture. One that humans don't always understand, but one that lives side by side with humans. Oh gosh, it made me so happy. There's so much to love about this movie, and I'm very happy with it. I'm so glad we got to watch it. I'm so glad it finally released.
Yeah, I will not begrudge you for liking, saying this is the best of the three. I think that's a valid choice. It's not maybe my pick of the three alternate universe ones, but I think it's definitely a solid entry and does some things very, very well. So
yeah, and the voice cast on fire, like Sarah Natacheni is like she's really coming in to her own as Ash. I'm loving it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and actually, we should point out there's some neat returns. One of the actors, the person, Megan Hollingshead, who played Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny during the first, she left before the dub switch over, like a season or two before that. But she has a role. If you listen really carefully to one of the female characters she plays, you can hear, yeah, that's a little bit of original Nurse Joy in there. But, I think they put together a good product despite some of the areas where I think they could still improve. So, I definitely like this one. Some parts, I'm not sure how often I'm going to rewatch, just because in part of some of the dark elements that I'm still kind of grappling with, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's definitely another solid effort. So, okay, I think we can stop recording. So, yes. I think we're going to get, I'm going to get 2 podcast episodes out of this discussion, although it's not quite as expansive as what we did for Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution. Thank you, folks, for you made it this far through our fumbles and our stumbles. This is not all the nice polished podcast feed that you get presumably this will come out on my feed sometime early next year when we finally get around to it. It sometimes takes us a while to do this, but we really appreciate being able to do this in front of an audience.
Yeah.
However, is right there. It helps us work there, helps us integrate some things. As far as stuff that's going on recently, like I said, I did put out an episode earlier this week. It is our Troze and Insert a Pokemon Song discussion. It's where we try to insert making my way into the first move of the doc. And and Anne tries to find a place for I Am a Collector in Revelation, the Japanese version of the second movie.
I do my best.
And Troze by itself, not a lot of content there, unfortunately, musically, but it was worth talking about and talking about the games usually do. Now, I did have to put a disclaimer at that episode, and I think never mind. Our episodes got edited out of order. Sorry.
Oh, yes. Sorry. That was my bad.
Hey, I'd rather have an episode than nothing, so don't worry about it. It's not like the world blew up or something, so. Anne, you did just send me the XD Gale of Darkness discussion audio. I have plenty to work on this weekend, I can tell you that much. My goodness. So looking forward to that. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone who came in. We always appreciate that. Like I said, soon-ish, we should be doing a discussion of the music of the Pokemon 25 album. Like I said, not officially associated with the movie, but I think there are some definite things we can connect there. And who knows, maybe they'll put out another music video or something to tie into the Diamond and Pearl remakes that uses one of the songs on there. You never know. All right, folks, I think that's going to do it for our discussion. Thank you very much. I knew this would be a long one, but all right, folks, thanks.
Bye.